So when it comes to me making YouTube videos, it's probably no secret to you guys that Leafy is here as one of the people that inspired me early on. Even with my content on this channel to this day, I wouldn't say that the actual content I make, as far as like, you know, the videos I put out are that reminiscent of Leafy, but probably my attitudes and sometimes maybe my voice or jokes I make are probably somewhat reminiscent of that guy. And you know, for a while, I think early on when I was making videos, especially in a time when Leafy was super hated online, I really used to not like that label, especially when I was much younger, when I was like 15, 16 on YouTube. I really didn't like it, but as time has passed, I've just kind of come to embrace the label. It's like, whatever, I don't really care. At the end of the day, if somebody wants to reduce my content down to that, it doesn't upset me that much. You know, he was like the biggest commentary channel of all time, pretty much. I don't think anyone else will ever top him. But it has been interesting to watch him come and go from YouTube time and time again, to the point now where he's actually left the internet once again. I managed to make a few videos about him, managed to get a community guideline strike on one of those videos, where I basically just talked about the various dramas he was getting in. I'm pretty sure I posted a call we had on one of his Rumble streams on my YouTube channel here, and people got to see that. But he's once again left the internet. Nobody really knows where he is. I've seen people posting like, Leafy's online on Discord, but he won't message me back on Twitter, and he's basically just dipped from the internet. You know, in that respect, Leafy's flakiness is something that really reminds me of one of my other friends who, I think he has ADHD, and I believe Leafy does as well. But he's basically someone who, like, it's extremely hard to hold his attention for almost any extended period of time. Even when he's offered to like work on projects for me, like currently he's supposed to have edited a video for me. It's been about a month since he said that it would be done, and once in a while he'll message me and be like, yeah, it's almost done, and then it just like he'll just dip and forget about it. And the thing is, at first I thought he was ducking me, but the last time he worked on a video with me, like, he actually did have it done on the time that he said it was done. Just getting him to send it to me and respond to my messages was such a pain in the ass. And I think a big part of that maybe is that people with ADHD just can't help themselves. I genuinely don't know, because most people I've met who have ADHD or claim to have ADHD, like, they're not this intense. But once in a while I'll meet someone who has it, and they are a pain in the ass to get a hold of and work with in any respect. But they also tend to be really prolific. Like, this friend I have is, you know, one of the funniest people I've met. He makes really cool art, really cool music, really cool stuff in general, cool videos, great at drawing. And Leafy, while he's not good at those specific things, as far as I know, in his own way, he was very prolific. You know, he was putting out a video every single day for a while on YouTube. He was really killing it at the game back then, and there's no doubt that, you know, part of the reason he blew up is due to his decent work ethic back in the day. You know, he was willing to put out a video every single day. Something that, for some reason, most YouTubers have to make videos complaining about mental health breaks when they have to do a video every day, you know? And like, some of these people probably do need a mental health break. Fair enough. I'm not trying to hardcore claim that, you know, nobody needs a mental health break. But I will say, I think a lot of YouTubers complain too much about my mental health, when it's like, go to the gym, you'll probably feel a lot better. Stop spending every single second inside. Spend 20% less time inside your bedroom and you'll probably feel 20 times better. But anyway, back in the day when Leafy was killing it on YouTube, there was a time period when, you know, I was pretty young, and I probably would call myself a YouTube sheep back then, okay? I was not the base god you guys know me as today. And so when iDubbbz made the Content Cop, and when a bunch of commentators like Hey Watch Your Mouth, Elvis the Alien, and Herotic made videos complaining about Leafy's behind the scenes behavior, I kind of just was like, hey, this guy's a piece of shit. Nobody should ever like him again. He's a horrible human being, which doesn't really make sense, because back in the day when he was making videos making fun of people, I thought it was great. And then as soon as someone said, all he does is make fun of people, I was like, oh, you're right, that sucks. But in reality, you know, Child Turkey Tom was part of that problem. I was viewing those videos, I was enjoying his mockery of those people. So I think it's pretty hypocritical for a lot of people to be like, oh, back in the day I used to like Leafy until I realized he was bullying people. And it's like, well, you enjoyed the bullying. You just realized it was bullying when somebody put a label on it that made you feel like you were going to be societally outed or something. You saw someone else being made fun of for something that you yourself were guilty of. And instead of recognizing that in yourself, you decided to say, oh, well, that was never me. That never could have been me. That was just this guy who makes the money off of it, not me who makes him the money. Let's shit on him and betray him forever, right? And then otherwise, a lot of the complaints about him from like Hey Watch Your Mouth were pretty silly. Like the whole is $20 thing okay? For those who don't remember, a lot of you guys probably don't even remember this. There was this guy named Hey Watch Your Mouth who had a pretty big YouTube channel at the time. He was pretty funny. I think he had this video called The Cuck of YouTube, which was like about Onision. I think that was the first time I heard the word, but I thought that was a pretty funny video when it came out. Overall, Hey Watch Your Mouth was one of the better commentators of his time. I think he was pretty funny. But anyway, Hey Watch Your Mouth released this video about Leafy called The Real Leafy Is Here, and the entire thing was basically a story about how he was mad because he offered to do an edit for Leafy, and they hadn't agreed to a price beforehand. And then when he's done, Leafy says, is 20 bucks okay? And hey, watch your mouth, instead of like asking for more money, he's just like, yeah, I'll take $20. Which is like, if you're doing business with anyone, like I get $20 is probably a somewhat low offer for, you know, the little animated skits that Nick was editing. You guys know those little animated skits Leafy had at the beginning of his videos sometimes? Like it had like a bunch of little characters like Colossal is Crazy, and they'd bounce up and down and stuff. A lot of those were made by Nick from Hey Watch Your Mouth, and Nick was basically complaining that he was underpaid. And it's like, okay, that's true. That's fair enough. Like I understand, you know, complaining about that. But at the same time, if you agreed to a relatively low price from beforehand, or if you didn't agree to any price, and there's no real expectation on Leafy to pay you more than that, in my opinion. But, you know, at the time when that video came out, when Elvis the Alien dropped his video, which I don't even remember what his complaints were, but I think he's made a video since then being like, you know what, that video was kind of stupid. I really didn't have any reason to make it. I was just kind of jumping on a bandwagon. It wasn't that bad. You guys remember Herotic? Herotic was like a classic commentary channel who, his initial video that blew him up way back when was about like Herobrine on like Minecraft Pocket Edition or something. Anyway, so that video blew up, and then he ended up switching to like, from like being cringe to being base, and he made commentary videos. And then at the time he made a video about how Leafy was like a shitty friend or something. But I just remember thinking like, man, all these people are really just coming out of the woodworks to shit on this guy when none of them seem to have a legitimate grievance with him, you know? They complain about his content, but all of the commentary community was doing the same exact thing as he was back then. They were just making fun of people. That's what everyone did. They were complaining about like somewhat scummy behind the scenes behavior, like I guess underpaying one editor who like never agreed to be paid to a certain amount in the first place in the beginning. Like, do I really care about that? Honestly, no. If I found out that Leafy had done something, you know, genuinely evil and criminal, and there was like absolute proof of it, then, you know, obviously that would be one thing. But from my perspective, like, I don't think any of the complaints people had about him behind the scenes were that great. I think a lot of people's complaints were like, he didn't respond to my Skype message, and it's like, well, yeah, his brains are probably scrambled eggs from all the drugs he does. And this is another thing I want to touch on. I think I made a video talking about this at some point, but Keemstar at some point went on Augie RFC's live stream, and he said something to the effect of like, Leafy is here and he's a legitimate intervention because he's a drug addict. I don't think I've ever talked to that guy when he's been sober. And this was relatively recent. This was like 2022 or 2021, I think this was. And I heard after the fact that I guess Leafy got mad at him because he was like, I don't need a fucking intervention. But if you know anything about Leafy, you know that he does enjoy drugs. You know, back in the day, he was someone who was definitely somewhat of a fiend. And to be honest, if Keemstar is saying you have a drug problem, he's probably not lying, right? He's probably not full of shit. He's probably telling the truth. And from personally talking to Leafy is here, to be honest, I feel like his brains are kind of scrambled eggs at this point. Like, he's not completely unintelligent, but from some of my conversations with him that I've had, like, he's kind of all over the place. Every second he's moving to a new topic. He can't stay on one thing at any point in time. He can't stay focused on anything. He has to constantly move around from subject to subject. He'll randomly like message you sometimes, and he'll be like, hey man, want to do this thing? And you'll be like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And like, keep in mind, you respond to him 1 minute later, and then he'll just dip. He'll just fucking like leave for like 3 days, and then message you about something unrelated later on. And that's what I'm talking about with the ADHD thing. Like, I think it is, you know, partially in a big aspect of ADHD, probably. But I think another aspect of it is probably drug use. Honestly, like I think his brains are somewhat fried. And he's been pretty open about the fact that he enjoys substances, and I'm not going to shame anyone who wants to partake in a little substance from time to time. You know, it can be fun, a fun way to have fun with your friends or significant other. But undoubtedly, I think it's probably bad to be constantly self-medicating. I think everyone in the audience would probably agree with this statement, right? Nobody's going to disagree with me. But according to Keemstar, at least, he thought that Leafy needed some kind of intervention because his brains were just absolutely fried, absolutely scrambled eggs. But that's also part of what made him so entertaining. You know, when I would watch his streams, when he came back to YouTube most recently and he would be streaming on Rumble, he would like constantly jump from subject to subject. He wouldn't stay in one place for very long. He would never be willing to do like deep analysis of anything. Like, it was always very surface level, and then move on to the next thing. And another thing I think that made it appealing was the fact that sometimes he would just like forget he was on stream seemingly, or maybe he knew and he just didn't care, and he would just go from like watching a video or reacting to something or talking to like just playing like some random game on his computer silently for like 20 minutes straight with music in the background. Like, that's what he would do, and I thought that was pretty funny. Now, that being said, with the sort of substance abuse aside, I think another thing that people should confront within themselves, okay, or maybe just something, you know, that I think is interesting, is there's no doubt that Leafy is an insecure person, right? And insecurity is fine. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it seems to me to be something that somewhat controls his life. I mean, back in the day, a lot of the people he would make fun of were, you know, pretty bad looking people, and meanwhile Leafy seemed to be somewhat insecure about his chin. I remember there was this one point in the iDubbbz video, which, you know, a big point of the iDubbbz video was to make fun of Leafy's insecurity, and within that video there was this point when Leafy responds and he's like, what, I have no chin? And he like turns his face to the side and he like immediately juts out his chin to show like he, you know, he has a jawline or whatever, to try to make it look more intense, more extreme, right? And I think that's obviously one thing that clued people into his insecurity. Leafy, other than the, you know, inherent projection from making fun of people in the first place for their appearance, you know, every single day. But another thing I think that people realize was there was this point when I think it was in the Content Deputy, which is like the follow-up iDubbbz did to the initial Content Cop about Leafy. And in that Content Deputy, there's this point when, during Leafy's response, he was like, why don't you compare me to every fucking cartoon character, dude? Why don't you compare me to all these fucking anime boys? I look like every anime boy ever. And I remember thinking that was so cringe when that happened. And I remember that iDubbbz was like, no, I think you got it wrong, Leafy. I did compare you to cartoon characters, just not attractive ones. And I think even when Leafy came back, it's apparent that there was probably some insecurity for him because he was going pretty strong with live streaming. He was posting a lot. And then his face reveal came out. And I covered the face reveal. I talked about it. And all of a sudden, everyone who hated him, and some people who liked him, were like instantly mocking him for his appearance because he no longer looked like the sort of androgynous 19-year-old he looked like, you know, 8 years ago, which, like, obviously he's not going to look like that anymore. But I think a lot of people were calling him fat. A lot of people were like, he's ugly, whatever, this and that. In reality, I don't think he's like particularly unattractive. I think to me he just looks like a typical half Asian 30-year-old man. But, you know, for people who were expecting him to maintain his femboy physique from back in the day, I think a lot of people were kind of disappointed. And around that time that face reveal came out and he got mocked, he was posting a few tweets about it and then deleting them about like, oh, should I shave, should I not shave, you know, this and that, basically just asking about his appearance. And around that time he did stream a few more times, but then he just pretty much like dipped from the internet. Like, he didn't post anymore. And this is someone who like didn't show his face very often at all, keep in mind. Back in the day he would show his face now and then, but like we hadn't really seen a full-on video of him like with face cam on since back in the day. And I think it's probably because he knew he would be made fun of, I think. And at the end of the day, I'm not trying to, you know, call out Leafy for being insecure, really, because we're all insecure, first of all, about something, and secondly, like, literally, who would I be to talk about, you know, appearance, right? But also, at the same time, I think that it is somewhat telling that, you know, he became relatively inactive once people saw his face for the first time in a while. He did stream a few more times, but he kind of became inactive. And then, most recently, his Twitter got banned again. I don't exactly know why, but I guess it's not that surprising he was banned after all the stuff he was tweeting. And now he's gone from the internet again. I've seen people posting stuff to the effect of like, oh, he's on Discord again, but he won't respond to my message. Tee. But it seems like he's not really going to come back right now. I think he did post some final message somewhere where he was like, yeah, I'll come back eventually when it's fun again. But I have to wonder, like, what does this guy do with all of his time, you know? People say he trades crypto or stocks, but like that doesn't take literally every second of every day. From what I understand, he has like upwards of $10 million in the bank just basically sitting there. So he's pretty much set for life in terms of money. But I don't know what he like does all day, you know? As like a 30-year-old guy who doesn't have to have like a normal job. I don't think he has any like relationship commitment or anything. He basically gets to just hang out. I wonder if that's fulfilling, you know? I always wonder how fulfilling that is as a life. Because I feel like when I'm 30, I'd like to have a family by then, right? Or be starting a family at the very least. But for some people, that's just not in the cards for them. They don't really care. So I imagine his days probably consist of, you know, waking up, playing video games or something, getting drunk or doing Adderall or something like that. Like, I wonder how much productivity he realistically has in his life. Maybe he does have a lot, you know, of passions and stuff that he just doesn't share on YouTube because he doesn't want it to be taken away because of internet psychos, which would be fair enough. But, you know, I sometimes wonder with these YouTubers, like, what are these people doing in their free time, you know, when they have a lot of it? But regardless of that, regardless of the insecurity Leafy has, regardless of all of that, there's no doubt in my mind that I still like the guy, you know? I still find him funny. His streams, even when he came back, were pretty good. His videos back in the day, I mean, not all of them stood the test of time, to be honest. A lot of them are kind of bad looking back. But what does stand the test of time on the internet, you know, years and years later? I'm pretty sure almost every video from 2016 that was popular is considered pretty cringe now. And how could it not be? I mean, it was made for a certain time period. It worked for that time period. But it's extremely hard to make something that not only is popular, like, and extremely popular like Leafy was in the moment, but then will also stand the test of time for 5 to 10 or even 20 years, you know? It's extremely hard to do that. Most people can't even do one. You know, most people can't even make something that's popular in the moment. Never mind make something that's popular long term. So I think it's kind of a mistake to make comments like, oh, his stuff just doesn't hold up today. It's like, well, what the does hold up today, you know? As for people who call Leafy like homophobic or racist or whatever based on his comeback and all the stuff, I can't really blame anyone for saying that because, like, the stuff he's tweeting, I mean, he literally wants people to think that, right? But do I think Leafy genuinely, like, doesn't like trans people? To be honest, no. To be honest, I don't think he has any real ideals or beliefs pretty much at all. outside of like personal self-interest and wanting to, you know, blow up and be famous and have fun on the internet. I don't really think he has any real personal ideals. I think he basically just is a being that exists, that wants to have fun and play video games and make money, and he's just kind of like a schizo fried internet machine, and that's about it. And that's part of what makes him so fascinating nowadays, especially because back in the day, you guys, you know, we may forget now because Leafy's kind of seen as like this anti-hero type character now, but back in the day, he was like the critical of his day. He was like calling out people for like being bad people, for shitty behavior, for being assholes, right? Like literally the most accurate comparison I can make to someone who's a modern day Leafy is Critical. Now Critical, you know, in current day, he's way less mean, he's way less divisive. He doesn't really make fun of people's appearance unless they are, you know, a terrible human being or someone who makes fun of others' appearances. Critical is a much nicer person. But in terms of the virality of their content, in terms of the frequency, and in terms of the fact that, you know, every single day you can be sure that you're going to get your Critical content slop. Back in the day, you could be sure that pretty much every single day you were going to get your Leafy content slop about whatever the current drama is, about whatever the current wackiest video on the internet is. But I think that Penguin Zero does a much better job of sort of playing the long game in that aspect by not making a ton of enemies, by not backstabbing people like Keemstar. I think he does it. I think Critical is probably like sort of the best case scenario commentary channel, right? And a lot of people call him a fence sitter. A lot of people criticize him and say he's boring. I'm going to make a video at some point soon in defense of Penguin Zero because I don't actually think he's a fence sitter at all. I think he's just like a normal guy who doesn't have extreme opinions because he's not a nut job crazy person. On the internet, everyone has a tendency to like want to see the craziest thing possible, want to see the craziest take possible, or just to have their personal takes validated by, you know, whatever person they're watching. And I think Critical is not someone who strives for that. I think he's just like a normal guy who has very sort of average takes because he is just, you know, a normal person. But we're kind of getting in the weeds here. Back to Leafy is here. Will he come back at some point? I think he probably will. I can't imagine that for the next 5 years we'll hear nothing from that guy. But at the same time, I also can't imagine that, I can't imagine there's a world where we never hear from him again. But obviously the heyday of his internet time is over, and we probably won't hear from him for a little bit. With each return, his following and impact seems to get a little bit smaller, and, you know, obviously it's going to because he's coming back very briefly and then leaving every time. There's not really time for a fan base to build up or for people to really stick around and enjoy the content. But regardless of that, when he does come back, I'll definitely be watching. I assume you guys will too. His most recent saga, to recap, he had some fun drama with Destiny where he, you know, I guess made fun of Destiny's wife. And apparently he like pulled up her nudes on stream, which is pretty crazy. Apart from that, there was also some other drama with him. He was going after people like Hassan Piker. There was this whole little like mini feud with Rice Gum until Rice Gum finally responded to his message, and then all of a sudden they were best friends. I think XQC was talking him most recently and saying he doesn't like Leafy, which is pretty funny. And you know what? I feel like overall, if you want to watch someone on the internet because they're a good person or because they're totally internally consistent, like that's fine. You can do that. But I think that's not the reason why I liked Leafy, and that's not the reason why he appeals to me in general. Overall, it's just because he's an interesting guy who has interesting things to say, and, you know, when he does speak, it tends to entertain me. When he came back on YouTube a few years ago, he was making videos about Pokimane. Those videos were good, but the really good videos were the videos where he was talking about, like, stock trading, where he talked about running his old Minecraft server when he was a kid. His old commentary videos were good, don't get me wrong, I liked them. But the videos I really remember are, like, the story about the time he met, like, a pedo bear on Discord. You guys will probably remember that story. Or stories about the first time, you know, he tried drugs, right? Those were great videos, man. I really liked them. I liked his storytelling. I thought it was pretty fun. And as a result, you know what? I hope he finds happiness. I wish him well. And Leafy, bro, just go to the gym, man. Listen, it's gonna change everything. Do steroids if you need to. Actually, don't do steroids. Don't do steroids. Just go to the gym, get jacked, come back in a few years. You'll be jacked. Shave your head like Andrew Tate. It'll be pretty base, dude, okay? All right, thanks for watching. And if you liked this video, consider becoming a member. For $5 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts, unreleased videos, and the members-only Minecraft server. Thanks so much to all of my YouTube members who fund my content.